Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. It's the WBA World Featherweight title on the line this weekend as Leigh Wood squares up against Josh Warrington. It's Nottingham Forest versus Leeds in what should be an all-action packed affair with a terrific atmosphere. Two very passionate fan bases who ride hard behind their fighter. Pause. They ride hard alongside their fighter, riding hard behind the fighter. That's how right. I know some of you guys are debaucherous out there. All the 15-year-olds out there, cover your ears. But they're going to generate a brilliant atmosphere that I believe will be reverberating around the Sheffield Arena and potentially get carried into the ring, influence the two fighters. And it could really well be a fight of the year candidate. I'm really looking forward to this. But let's get technical. Let's talk about how this fight could potentially go. If you look at the careers of these two men in recent years, they couldn't be any different from each other. In 2020, Jazza Dickens beat Leigh Wood for the European title via majority decision. If I told you at that point Leigh Wood would go on to beat undefeated prospect Reece Mould, he'd beat Can Zhu and become a world champion. He'd beat Michael Conlan. He would beat Mauricio Lara after having to avenge a knockout defeat at his hands. You'd go to me, nah, he ain't achieving anything like that. What are you talking about, Chris? If I told you that about Josh Warrington, though, you would believe it. Because in 2020, he would have already beaten the likes of Lee Selby, Carl Frampton, Kid Galahad, the fight that I felt he won legitimately. I know a number of you felt that maybe Kid Galahad did enough. Regardless of where you stand on that, it was an undefeated Galahad, very awkward switch hitter, a very talented fighter, and he managed to find a way through. So you're looking at that CV and you're thinking, okay, he's one of the stars of British boxing. He could potentially go on to achieve some big things. Instead, Warrington's career fell off a cliff in some ways. He ran into the unheralded Mauricio Lara, all wrong for him stylistically. He was stopped. Then came the technical draw in the rematch, which was occurring because of a clash of heads. Many felt as though Warrington meant to do that because he was looking for a way out. I don't believe that. I don't buy into that. It was a second round. I thought Warrington won the first. I thought the second was looking difficult for Warrington, but I don't suddenly think he said, okay, let me put the nut in and hope that it goes to the card so I can find a way out here because I'm going to get stopped. But that was one of the prevailing viewpoints among hardcore fans. And so you saw his stock fall quite a bit. And then when he fought Kiko Martinez and he beat Kiko, because he got his jaw broken, people again were saying, is this guy vulnerable? What's going on? Every time he's getting in the ring now, he's getting seriously damaged. Then he fights the big, heavy-handed, awkward Mexican in Luis Alberto Lopez, loses a majority decision in his home country to him, and all of a sudden people are saying, nah, his stock's fallen massively. He's not the guy he used to be. So in some ways, he's on the descent. In other ways, Leigh Wood is on the ascent. Does that mean that Leigh Wood is the justified favourite? Well, let's talk about this fight from a stylistic perspective. First and foremost, one of the ways in which I've described Josh Warrington in the past is that he's somewhat like a hurricane because he's not a big puncher, but he's a buzzsaw. And what he tends to do is he'll like to be on the outside, all the way on the outside, and then he'll collapse the pocket very, very quickly. He comes out of the blue, just like a storm in many senses. And when he's exiting the pocket, he'll have that high guard and he'll get out and he's looking to protect himself and he's looking to stop these big wide shots coming in. And he'll step out and then change the angle and seek to essentially get you to reset before he starts his raid. Now that leaves him open to body shots, and we'll get into that later on as he's exiting the pocket. But ultimately, he's seeking to be safe until he can reset and launch and come back in and then overwhelm you with volume. And when he does come in, he'll come in so quickly, so aggressively. He'll dip at the knees, he'll dip his chin down, and he'll come in fast. And that's why sometimes the forehead can come in so quickly that the two heads can clash. And so it's a very dirty and yet difficult style to deal with. And I say dirty rather than just reckless because he does like the odd rabbit punch as well, does Josh Warrington. You will often see forearms flailing in there. He's a very rough and tumble type of guy. And so what happened is against Mauricio Lara, when he came up against him and he's trying to collapse the pocket and jump on Lara and then start throwing a frenetic combination of flurries, all of a sudden you see Mauricio Lara say, listen, I'm durable and I'm a massive puncher. If you're going to come into my wheelhouse, I'm going to load up with everything I've got. Even if you land two shots on me, the one I'm going to land is going to be a lot more destructive and I'm going to take you out. You see, in many ways, Josh Warrington is much like a strong wind, a hurricane or a gale force. He brings this frenetic tempo that just appears out of nowhere, okay? You think you're safe, he's on the outside, all of a sudden he's collapsed the pocket, he's knocked you off your feet, right? Like a strong wind, and then you can't get up. He's keeping you off balance, he's knocking you off here and there, but he's not a big power puncher. So it's more to do with the accumulation of the effect of this frenetic attack that is affecting you. Well, when you consider that a strong wind can affect certain things more than other things, right? A strong wind will go and batter a flimsy shed. It might not go and batter a skyscraper that's been built to withstand strong winds. So let's use an analogy that I've used in the past when talking about Warrington and Lara. If Josh Warrington is a hurricane, guys like Carl Frampton, guys like Lee Selby, they're superbikes. They're these beautifully constructed vehicles, flashy, all the latest gadgets. When you see them at top speed, they're a beauty to behold. But what do superbikes need in order to operate at the highest level? They want a nice smooth track. They want to get on that track so they can show you everything that they can do. If you're going to put them on this mountainous road, potholes here, potholes there, then all of a sudden this hurricane turns up, this gale force, and it starts battering the superbike. You don't want to be the rider on a superbike at the top of that mountain. Suddenly you're swaying to the right, you're swaying to the left. Next thing you know, you've taken a nosedive off of the hilltop. Well, the same sort of thing applies to those guys. They want their spacing. They want to be able to dictate distance and range. They want to be able to pick their shots. Well, Josh Warrington didn't allow him to do that. He came in like a storm, like a gale force, and he's knocking them off balance. He's offsetting them. He's affecting them, their construct. He's breaking them down. Whereas Mauricio Lara, he ain't no superbike. There's nothing pretty about what he does. Where are the gadgets? Where's the beautifully constructed method of operation? There's none of that. But he's a truck. That wind, that gale force keeps banging off the windscreen of that truck and it keeps plowing through. No problem. Driving straight through Alaska, I've got a delivery to make. I'm going to keep going. And that's essentially what Josh Warrington ran into. I'm going to be frenetic. I'm going to hold my feet in the pocket. I'm going to go with furious volume. And it's just bouncing off Mauricio Lara. And he's throwing punches back and it's affecting Josh Warrington. That doesn't mean that Mauricio Lara is better than Carl Frampton or that he's more skilled than Lee Selby. Doesn't mean any of that. But stylistically speaking, Warrington ran into a problem. Now, Leigh Wood is not like Mauricio Lara in the sense that he's not this indestructible Mack truck where everything just bounces off it and he keeps on going. That's not who Leigh Wood is. We've seen him hurt on numerous occasions. He can be vulnerable. He can be buzzed. There's no doubt about that. And Warrington will be looking at that saying, I've got no problem as a gust of wind to come up there on that mountaintop and throw you off that cliff. I've got no problem in doing that. Whereas Leigh Wood will be looking at it and saying, okay, you might have this frenetic approach that could cause people problems, but you can't be a whirling dervish against me with the power that I carry. Who you think you are? You're just going to run in on me with this power. I'm not Carl Frampton. I'm much bigger than Carl. I hit harder than Carl. I'm not Lee Selby. I hit much harder than Lee Selby. You try and run in on me, I'm going to clean your clock. And that's where it becomes interesting because both guys will be looking at the potential weaknesses of the other and saying, I can exploit what they're going to try and do here. You see, when you look at Leigh Wood and his series of attributes, if you go and look at him against Jazza Dickens, for instance, although Dickens is a southpaw, he was able to make him uncomfortable at times by quickly collapsing the pocket and rushing in on him. And one of the things he used to have a tendency to do, Leigh Wood, is load up on big individual shots, and he could lose his positioning from that. It could affect his construct. But he's relying on that power, something that Ben Davison's spoken so highly of, saying I couldn't believe how hard he hit when I took him on the pads for the first time. A featherweight should not be able to hit that hard. And so perhaps he'd be looking for that equalizer constantly because he knew he had it in his arsenal. Since teaming up with Ben Davison, he's become much more disciplined. He now keeps his feet below him. He keeps his construct a lot better. He keeps that right hand high up to protect his face. And he looks to dictate with the lead hand. And he'll pop it upstairs, pop it downstairs to the solar plexus, making sure you're staying at range. And that right hand comes in like the hammer. And behind that, sometimes he'll also throw a really powerful uppercut. He's got a nice backhand uppercut as Leigh Wood. And if you do get close to him, he can throw some powerful hooks too, particularly to the body. However, up close, I don't think he's quite as effective. And one of the reasons is that he's got long limbs, so the trajectory of the punch is longer. And if he's hooking with a hooker, it could leave him exposed. The other thing is that he stands quite tall inside the pocket. And when he does get hit with shots, he doesn't always take them that well. He showed incredible heart against Michael Conlan, but he was getting buzzed quite consistently, right? He is a guy that can be hurt. And so he's better off tying up guys when he's on the inside. Well, one of the problems he's going to have against Josh Warrington is that Warrington's very hard to tie up on the inside because he causes that mayhem. But as Warrington is going to be potentially moving around with that high guard, that stab jab to the body and the backhand to the body, and that little thing where maybe as he's looking to come in, he'll drop his chin and rush in, that could also leave him open to an uppercut potentially. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that when fighters see a habit in another guy that they consider to be illegal, they will often complain about that because they want to draw attention to it so that the referee can respond to it quickly. If you're going to fight Devin Haney, for instance, you better spend the whole fight week, talking about his tendency to grab and how the referee's got to be strong. That way there's pressure on the ref. Every time he ties you up, the ref's going to be quick to react. If you don't mention it, he's going to get away with murder. Consider this. When Leigh Wood was asked recently whether he believes that Josh Warrington goes in with his head on purpose, Leigh Wood actually downplayed it and said that he doesn't believe that it's done on purpose and that he just enters the pocket quickly and it can lead to a clash of heads. And I'm paraphrasing there, as I'm paraphrasing here with Ben Davison. But when Ben was asked, he also said something along the lines of, we know what he does and, it's on us to be prepared for that. We have to be ready, and with the tools that Leigh Wood's got, essentially, we can capitalize on that sort of thing. None of it shaped around drawing the referee's attention to a potentially illegal tactic. Why? Well, you have to try and understand the way in which Ben Davison's methodology operates. You see, he will have Lee Wiley as his performance analyst stroke scout who will observe the opponent. He will analyze him and present Ben with a report essentially on the patterns of play, certain habits that this particular fighter has in certain situations. Ben will then go away and create drills to practice in the gym that can replicate those patterns and to try and exploit them if they take place in the ring. So with that in mind, it's all about pattern identification. If you're therefore seeing a pattern that you feel you can exploit, you don't want the referee to take that pattern away. Let that pattern be there. Let him lead with his head. We'll take half a step back and launch that backhand down the pipe. Alternatively, we'll throw that backhand down the pipe, little left hook, and curl away as he does it. So again, he's struggling to close the range in a linear fashion. And if he is going to keep that high guard and he does drop his head and lean in with his head, we know that Leigh Wood's got a lovely uppercut. So potentially we're going to find home to the body, the solar plexus, and to the head as he gets reckless and seeks to enter. Early on, we'll keep him at bay. Every time we're going to follow him out as he seeks to step out with that high guard to get around the ring, we're going to follow him out and target the body. So we will dictate, we will control Josh Warrington just like we controlled Mauricio Lara. You see, in the first fight, Leigh Wood was in control. Then he got greedy and he started to make some errors with Mauricio Lara and he got caught. Now, when it came to the rematch, I was telling everybody, I'm bullish on the fact that I think that Leigh Wood is going to win this fight. And Dan Canobio of CompuBox does this podcast with Chris Algieri, and he put out a tweet to say, show me someone who had Leigh Wood by decision. And shout out to This Is Box Junkie, or Kevin Lorena's Smirking Revenge is what he has his username as on Twitter. He actually was kind enough to copy me in and said, Chris Andre called it. And I said, look, to be fair, I did say either Wood late or points though, so I'm sort of semi-hedging the bet there. But yes, I was very bullish on the idea that Leigh Wood was going to outbox him. I felt as though as long as Leigh Wood sticks to the game plan, it's a mismatch because Lara is a plodder. He likes to have that high guard and he'll lean forward and offer you some bait, and from that position where he's leant forward, he'll launch with a long jab, and that's his entry point. He jumps in, there's a launching pad, but you see that he's setting up on that launching pad by leaning onto that front foot. So if every time he steps onto that front foot, you either hit him to the body just before he's committed to that front foot, or you take half a step back, he's always just going to be out of range or kept off balance, kept off set. And because he's ducking forward as well, he could potentially walk onto an uppercut, and he did get dropped by an uppercut. So when you start to see all these little patterns, it felt like it could really be an easy night's work for Leigh Wood, even though that wasn't the prevailing narrative at the time. With Kanju, it's a similar sort of thing in that he has high volume, but he stands quite upright and he's a bit of a plodder. So again, Leigh Wood is able to keep his feet beneath him, be very controlled and disciplined, and to control the opponent. With Warrington, it's harder to do that because his feet are fast. So it's not just a case of you saying, I'm going to take half a step back every time he seeks to come in and I'm going to rip that uppercut, rip a long backhand and, dictate him and offset him and keep him at bay. Because although Leigh Wood has got some good feet, Warrington's also got some fast feet too, and he is willing to take a shot to get his own shots off. And when he comes inside, if he's able to avoid being tied up, or if he's going to be able to be physically strong enough to stop the clinch from Leigh Wood, then you could start to see Leigh Wood being uncomfortable inside the pocket. And he's always going to have that punch and power. So that could be an equalizer at any given moment. But Josh Warrington's got a great chin, guys. This is a guy that had his jaw broken against Kiko Martinez and won the fight. Against Mauricio Lara, he got dropped and he seemed dead on his feet in round 4. He made it until round 9. So we know that Lara's a big puncher. We know that Leigh Wood's a big puncher. And we know that Josh Warrington can handle the power punching. We know that Frampton's a banger too and he can handle him. So I believe in the chin of Josh Warrington. He had that jaw broken against Kiko Martinez too. And so you can't just rely on power. Of course, anybody can be knocked out and Leigh Wood can bang. And if he lands right at the right time, yeah, sure, he could stop Josh Warrington. But the fact of the matter is, he's going to have to be able to be really accurate with it, but also to control him and maintain range and be the king when it comes to distance control. Is he going to be the ring general in that way? I'm not so sure. I've got a feeling with the crowd and the atmosphere being the way it is, Josh Warrington's going to be the guy who, after a bit of a slow start and with Leigh Wood having some success, I think you'll start to see Warrington start to get close. And you'll start to see some of those nice little hooks that he throws. He works the body very, very well. And he goes to the head immediately after the body. He throws this nice little left hook to the body, followed by a left hook upstairs. And because Leigh Wood fights kind of tall, if he's unable to tie him up, he could start getting caught with some big shots. And because there's that constant forward momentum from Warrington, he can then start to affect the construct of Leigh Wood and start to affect his balance. And so if Leigh Wood is not able to control him, and if Warrington is not affected by the power of Leigh Wood, Warrington could really start to offset him here. I think he's going to have to really put a dent in Josh Warrington. So how do I think this fight will go? I think Josh Warrington could very well try to make a fast start, but Leigh Wood will have some success. But I think Warrington will start to close that range with those fast feet and start to make it into a mauling type of affair. The crowd will be roaring, and perhaps that will lead Leigh Wood to lose a bit of discipline and want to get into a bit of a firefight, which I don't think will suit him. He does have the punching power, but is he going to be allowed to set his feet consistently enough? Or is he going to start to be ripped to the body? We know that he's been struggling to make the weight for a long time. We've seen him hurt in the past. We could potentially see him get buzzed here. Warrington's not a puncher, but he has a frenetic tempo. It could very well be that the hurricane is able to cause one last serious storm here. And I have a feeling that Josh Warrington's going to win this fight on points. Of course, I can see a path to victory as well for Leigh Wood, who I think is terrific. And he's the better technical boxer in some ways, and he's also got the punch and power between the two. I just think that perhaps he's not fought a guy who's going to put him on the back foot like this since he fought Jazza Dickens, and I think that Warrington knows what's at stake here, and he's really going to bring it. And I've just got a feeling that he'll start to outwork Leigh Wood. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.